He thought he was just being kind to a stranger. A tired man, worn from work and fatherhood, simply offered comfort to a woman crying at a bar. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that this woman was one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. And what started as one drink, one small gesture of kindness, would change both their lives forever. James Walker didn't go out much. His life, ever since his wife passed away 3 years ago, had revolved around his daughter Emma. The cheerful, bright-eyed 5-year-old was his entire world. Every decision James made, from the job he took at the local mechanic shop to the basement apartment he rented, was for her. But every now and then, when Emma was safely asleep at his sister's house, James allowed himself one evening out. Nothing fancy, just a quiet beer at the small bar on Main Street, where no one asked too many questions and the lights were dim enough to forget his grief for a little while. That particular Thursday night, the bar was quieter than usual. James sat in his usual corner, nursing a pint and scrolling absent-mindedly through pictures of Emma on his phone. That's when he noticed her. She walked in like a shadow, dressed in a sleek black coat, her heels clicking softly on the wooden floor. Her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were swollen, red. She didn't order a drink at first. She just sat there at the far end of the bar, staring down at her hands, her shoulders trembling slightly as if she were trying not to fall apart. James wasn't the type to get involved. He'd seen people in pain before, and he knew that sometimes the best thing you could do was leave them alone. But something about this woman pulled at him. Maybe it was the way she tried so hard to keep her composure, or maybe it was how alone she looked in a room full of people. After a few minutes, he stood up, walked over quietly, and gently placed a napkin with a silly drawing on the bar in front of her. It was a simple sketch of a little girl holding a balloon that said, "It gets better." The woman looked up, startled, and then slowly, a faint smile crept onto her lips. "Did your daughter draw this?" she asked, her voice cracked. "No," James chuckled, scratching the back of his neck. "I did, but I'll tell her you said that she'd be flattered." That was the beginning. They talked for almost 2 hours that night. Nothing deep at first, small things, the weather, favorite foods. She said her name was Anna, just Anna. He didn't pry, and she didn't offer more. But as the night deepened and the bar emptied, she opened up. She told him she had lost something. She didn't say what, but her voice was full of regret and exhaustion. James just listened. He didn't try to fix. He didn't offer advice. He simply sat there and let her talk. When she left, she placed a hand on his arm and said, "Thank you for seeing me." The next night, she came back, and the next. Each evening, she opened up a little more. She talked about her childhood, about being a woman in a world that didn't take her seriously, about being successful but feeling empty. James, in turn, shared his story, losing his wife in a car accident, raising Emma alone, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Anna never said what she did for a living. James never asked. He wasn't interested in her job. He was interested in her, the woman who laughed too loudly when she was tired and always ordered French fries no matter what else was on the menu. One night, as they walked out of the bar together, James noticed the sleek black car idling by the curb. A man in a sharp suit stepped out and opened the door for Anna. James looked at her, surprised. She hesitated, then said quietly, "I should have told you, I'm not just Anna. I'm Anna Grayson." The name didn't register at first, until she added, "Grayson Technologies." James blinked. "That was one of the biggest tech firms in the country. You're the CEO?" he asked, stunned. She nodded. "And I haven't felt like a person in years until I met you." James didn't know what to say. For a moment, he felt like he'd been tricked, like everything had been a lie. But then he looked into her eyes and saw the same sadness, the same vulnerability he'd seen on the first night. He took a deep breath. "I don't care who you are. I just care that you're real with me." Anna smiled, truly smiled for the first time. From that moment on, their lives began to change. The next morning, James couldn't shake the strange feeling in his chest. Anna's confession had stirred something deep and unfamiliar, an old ache he thought had long faded, now returning with a new name and face. He stood in the garage, half-heartedly tightening the bolts on a customer's car, but his mind was replaying every moment of the night before. Anna Grayson, the name echoed in his head like a foreign language. Billionaire tech CEO, visionary. The woman who built the future, according to Forbes. He had seen her name in headlines and magazines before, but he'd never cared enough to connect the image to anyone real. Now, she wasn't just some polished figure behind a podium. She was the woman who cried over cheap whiskey and smiled at his terrible napkin doodles. He felt small, out of place, like someone who'd stepped into a dream meant for someone else. Later, that evening, he picked up Emma from his sister's house. She came running with arms wide open, clutching her ragged pink stuffed bear. "Daddy, did you miss me?" "Always," James said, swinging her into his arms. He drove home in silence, listening to Emma hum in the back seat. His daughter was his compass, the one steady thing in a life filled with detours and half-built bridges. He didn't know where things with Anna were going, or if they were going anywhere at all, but Emma was his grounding force. No matter what happened, she came first. Still, he found himself looking at his phone that night. No text, no call, just silence. He convinced himself she was busy. A woman like her probably had meetings stacked to the ceiling, but somewhere deep inside, fear crept in. Maybe she regretted telling him. Maybe she realized he didn't belong in her world. Maybe kindness was all she needed, and now the moment had passed. 3 days went by with no word. Then, on the 4th day, while James and Emma were at the park feeding ducks, his phone buzzed. "Anna, can I see you tonight, please?" He stared at the message, heart pounding. Then typed back, "Same place?" She replied instantly. "Anna, no, come to me." Attached was an address, Beverly Heights, one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. For a second, James hesitated, but then he looked at Emma, her laugh echoing across the pond, and thought, what if this was something real? He dropped Emma off with his sister again that evening, dressed in his cleanest shirt and borrowed shoes. The drive to Anna's place was like climbing through a different world. Towering gates, sprawling driveways, lights that glowed like stars in the earth. When he pulled up, the guard at the gate checked his name and waved him through. Her mansion loomed at the top of the hill. Glass, stone, steel. Everything was sleek and perfect. James stepped out of his truck and stood awkwardly at the massive front door, feeling like a delivery man in a fairy tale. Before he could knock, the door opened. Anna stood there barefoot, in a sweatshirt and leggings, her hair tied in a messy bun. She looked ordinary and heartbreakingly beautiful. "I'm sorry," she said. Before he could speak, James didn't know what to say. She stepped aside, motioning him in. "I didn't know how to explain myself after I told you the truth," she said. "I thought maybe it would scare you away." He looked around the grand foyer, marble floors, art that looked like it belonged in a museum. "Yeah, well, this place is a little intimidating." Anna laughed softly. "That's why I stay away from it as much as I can. It never feels like home." They moved to the living room. She poured them both tea, her hands shaking slightly, and they sat across from each other, a silence stretching between them. "I've been alone for a long time, James," she said finally. "Even when I was married, especially when I was married. My ex-husband only loved my success, not me. When I divorced him, the tabloids said I was impossible to love." "That's a lie," James said, his voice quiet but firm. "They don't know you." She looked at him with watery eyes. "You saw me before you knew who I was. And that meant everything to me." James leaned forward. "You could be anyone, Anna. CEO, waitress, astronaut, doesn't matter. What matters is that I see the way your eyes light up when you talk about art, or how you always leave exactly one French fry on the plate because you feel guilty eating the last one. You're real." She laughed again, a sound full of surprise and emotion. "How do you do that? What? Make me feel human." James reached across the table, gently taking her hand. "Because you are." They stayed that way for hours, sipping tea, telling stories. She showed him her studio in the back, a small room full of canvases and half-finished paintings. "This is the only place I feel like myself," she whispered. That night, they didn't kiss. They didn't touch. Beyond a held hand. But something stronger happened, a silent agreement, a fragile thread of trust forming between two broken people. But the world didn't stay quiet for long. The following week, paparazzi photos leaked. James and Anna walking side by side into a bar, leaving together, laughing. Suddenly, the story was everywhere. Tech Queen's mystery man, who was the single father capturing Anna Grayson's heart. James woke up to the chaos. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. His shop got hounded by journalists. Emma's preschool called, worried about increased attention. The quiet life he'd built was crashing down around him. He called Anna, panic rising in his voice. "This isn't going to work, Anna. This is your world, I don't belong in it." "Don't say that," she whispered. "Please don't walk away. I have a daughter to protect. I can't have strangers flashing cameras at her." "I'll fix this," she promised. "I swear to you, James, I didn't mean for any of this to happen." And she did try. She released a statement. She asked the press to back off. She even offered to fly James and Emma somewhere quiet for a while. But James refused. "I don't need protection," he told her. "I need peace. And I need you to decide, am I a part of your real life, or just a weekend escape?" Her silence hurt. More than any answer, days passed. Then a week, James returned to routine, throwing himself into work, pretending he hadn't felt something real with her. Emma sensed something was wrong. One night while they were watching cartoons, she looked up and asked, "Daddy, why are your eyes sad?" James smiled and pulled her close. "Just tired, sweetheart." That night, a knock came at the door. Anna stood there in the rain, soaked to the bone, holding a small painting. "I painted this for you," she said, tears in her eyes. "It's the corner booth at the bar, the night you gave me that napkin." James stared at her, stunned. "I've made my choice, James. I don't want a world without you in it. I spent so long being strong, successful, untouchable. But what's the point of all of that if I can't come home to someone who sees me?" He stepped aside. She walked in. And this time, when he kissed her, it wasn't quiet or hesitant. It was full of all the moments they'd lost and everything they still hoped to find. They didn't fall into bliss overnight. Love, true love, wasn't just a kiss in the rain or a soft whisper in the dark. It was the messy, stubborn, sometimes painful work of weaving two completely different lives into something whole. After that night, James and Anna tried to figure out what it meant to really be together. Anna started coming to James's apartment more often than he visited her estate. She liked it better there, she said. Less space, but more warmth. She would sit on the couch beside Emma while James cooked dinner, letting the little girl braid her hair and tell wild stories about school and ducks and her stuffed bear, Captain Marshmallow. Emma adored Anna, and Anna, in return, was gentle, curious, and surprisingly patient. She never treated the child like an inconvenience or a footnote. To Emma, she was just Miss Anna, the lady who brought her sketchbooks and listened like her stories mattered. But outside that apartment, reality was tightening its grip. Anna's board of directors was livid. Behind closed doors, they told her point blank, "This relationship is a liability." One even dared to say, "You built this empire on discipline, Anna, on image." A single father with a garage job doesn't match the narrative. Anna's face had never been colder. I didn't ask for your approval. I asked for your loyalty. But the pressure didn't end there. One morning, James found a printed envelope slipped under his door. Inside was a letter from a tabloid reporter offering $10,000 for an exclusive interview. Attached were grainy photos of Emma, taken without consent. At the playground, at school, even outside the apartment, James's hands trembled when he confronted Anna. She was devastated. I thought they would leave you alone. I thought I had enough power to protect you. I don't care about me, James snapped. But Emma, she's just a kid. She didn't ask for this. They argued that night, for the first time. Loud, raw, and painful. James, you say you love us, but you don't understand what it's like to need privacy. Not want, need. Anna, and you think I don't sacrifice anything for this? I fight every day just to be taken seriously in my own company. Because I'm a woman. Because I show emotion. Because I dare to be human. Don't talk to me about pressure, James. They stared at each other across the kitchen like strangers. But then Emma wandered in, half asleep, and said, "Why are you fighting? Did someone break the crayons?" That simple sentence cracked them both open. Anna knelt in front of Emma, tears rolling silently. "No, sweetheart. We just forgot how to share." In the weeks that followed, Anna made hard choices. She took a temporary leave from her company, citing personal priorities to the press. Though her board pushed back fiercely, the media spun it into wild narratives. Tech queen steps down amid romance drama. Lover breakdown. Grayson's sudden exit raises eyebrows. But Anna didn't flinch. She moved into a modest townhouse nearer to James. Quiet, charming, anonymous. The kind of place where kids could ride bikes and neighbors waved from porches. It wasn't a perfect fit, but it was effort. And James saw it. They started building a life together. Grocery shopping, school drop-offs, weekend walks in the park. For the first time, James let himself imagine a future that wasn't just about survival, but about joy. But just when things began to feel safe, the past came clawing back. One crisp Sunday morning, Anna received a knock at her townhouse door. She expected James. Instead, it was her ex-husband, Derek Langford. Slick smile, polished shoes. The devil in a tailored suit. "Anna," he said with feigned charm, "we need to talk." James arrived minutes later to find them mid-conversation. On the porch, Anna's arms were crossed tightly. James instinctively reached for her waist, grounding her. Derek looked James up and down. "So this is the mechanic," he said with thinly veiled disdain. "And you must be the ghost she finally stopped chasing." James replied coldly. Derek chuckled, but his eyes were sharp. "Careful, grease monkey. You're standing in a world you don't understand." He turned to Anna. "I came to warn you. Investors are nervous. They think you're distracted. Rumors are flying. You know how quickly power slips away in this business." "I'm not afraid of rumors," Anna said. Derek leaned in, voice low. "Then you're not paying attention. They're voting on a permanent replacement next month. If you don't get your head back in the game, you'll lose everything." James tried to speak, but Anna touched his arm, her signal to let her handle it. "I've already lost everything that didn't matter," she said. "So I know exactly what I'm protecting now." Derek smirked. "We'll see." He walked away, but the tension he brought lingered like a storm cloud. Over the next several days, Anna became quieter. Not distant, just consumed. James found her awake at 2 a.m., staring at spreadsheets. She said it was just in case, but he knew the fire was back in her. And with it, the old fear that she might forget how to stop burning. One evening, James sat across from her and said, "You don't have to choose." She looked up, exhausted. "But what if I can't have both?" He reached for her hand. "Then let's find a new way." The board meeting. Anna walked into the towering boardroom alone, but everything James ever told her echoed in her mind. She spoke plainly, firmly. She reminded them of what she built, of why it mattered, of how leadership wasn't just performance, it was truth. "I took a step back to figure out what kind of leader I want to be," she said. "And I realized something. I can't build the future if I'm ashamed of the present. I love someone who reminds me of who I was before I was powerful. And that is not a weakness, it's my greatest strength." There was silence, then a few nods. Then more. The vote came down. Narrow but in her favor. Anna Grayson remained CEO, but now she returned home not to a cold mansion, but to the scent of dinner on the stove, the sound of Emma's giggle, and the arms of a man who saw her not her empire. Sometimes when everything finally feels safe, life tests your grip on it. And just when Anna thought she had finally balanced her heart and her empire, life reminded her how fragile that balance could be. It started with a phone call. James had gone out that morning to take Emma to school. It was their little routine: apple slices in the car, her favorite pop song blasting from the speakers, her tiny hand always reaching for his at crosswalks. But that morning, Anna's phone rang just as she was finishing her first meeting of the day. The voice on the other end was unfamiliar, but what it said froze her in place. "There's been an accident." James had been driving through an intersection when a delivery truck ran a red light. The impact was sharp, sudden, and terrifying. Witnesses said he turned the wheel just in time to shield Emma. The paramedics said that if he hadn't reacted the way he did, she would have taken the full force of the collision. Anna drove like a maniac to the hospital, her hands shaking, heart slamming against her ribs. Reporters were already outside when she arrived. Cameras flashed, voices shouted questions. She didn't stop. She COULDN single quotes T. Inside. She found Emma first scared, but physically unharmed. She had a tiny bandage on her forehead and was clutching Captain Marshmallow tightly. The nurse said she'd asked for Anna by name. "Miss Anna," Emma whimpered, wrapping her arms around her. "Daddy didn't wake up yet." Anna held her close and promised everything would be okay. Then she went to find James. He was unconscious, bruised, and pale. The machines beeped steadily beside him, but the sight nearly crushed her. She took his hand, whispering through tears, "You saved her, James. You saved her." Hours passed. Emma eventually fell asleep in the pediatric wing. Anna stayed by James's side, watching the lines on the monitor like they were the only things holding her together. When he finally opened his eyes, groggy and confused, her tears came in a flood. "You're here," he rasped. "Always," she said. "Don't you ever scare me like that again." He gave her a faint smile. "You cry kinda ugly when you're worried." She laughed through her tears, leaned in, and kissed his forehead. The recovery was slow. James had fractured ribs and a concussion. The doctors insisted he stay in the hospital for a week. Anna didn't leave his side once. She canceled meetings, postponed projects, ignored the press. Her assistants panicked. Her board begged her to reconsider. One of her international partners even threatened to walk away from a massive deal. But Anna didn't care. She sat by James, helped him eat, kept Emma entertained in the waiting room. She even read bedtime stories aloud while balancing work emails on her tablet. One night, after Emma had fallen asleep beside James in the hospital bed, Anna sat in the corner and stared out the window. The moonlight made everything feel quiet, like the world had paused for a moment, just to let them breathe. She whispered, "I don't know how to do this without you anymore." James, still bruised but alert, looked at her from across the bed. "Then don't." But life didn't wait forever. A week later, Anna was summoned for an emergency video conference with her executive board. A major investor was threatening to pull funding unless she flew to Singapore for an emergency negotiation. The deal could determine the future of Grayson Technologies. She stood in the hallway of the hospital, listening to voices argue over profits. and projections. All she could think of was Emma's tiny hand in hers and James's tired smile. "Miss Grayson," her assistant said gently through the call, "if you don't go, we could lose everything we've built." Anna didn't answer right away. Later in James's hospital room, she sat on the edge of the bed. "I have to leave for 3 days," she said softly. James nodded. "You should go. You've worked your whole life for this." "But I don't want to go." He took her hand. "Then go because it matters, not because it's easy. We'll be here, waiting." She looked into his eyes, aching with guilt and gratitude. "Promise me you won't try to do anything heroic while I'm gone," she whispered. "I already did my hero moment," he smiled. "Now it's your turn." Anna flew out that night. It was the hardest decision she'd ever made, but in her heart, she knew it was necessary. The negotiations were brutal days full of pressure, doubt, and power plays. But Anna fought harder than ever. She didn't just save the deal, she rewrote it. On the 3rd day, when she finally returned to her hotel room, her phone buzzed with a video message from Emma. It was short and simple. "Hi Miss Anna, we love you. Daddy says you're the strongest superhero ever." Anna broke down sobbing. She returned home to a small crowd of journalists, but this time, she walked through them with pride. She had just secured the biggest tech partnership of the year. But more than that, she had something no one could. Put in a headline: love, family, real life. When she stepped into the hospital room, James and Emma were playing with LEGOs. They both looked up and lit up. Emma ran to her. "Did you win?" Anna knelt down. "I did." James raised an eyebrow. "Both the deal and the heart?" She grinned. "Especially the heart." Weeks later, James finally came home. The first night back in their modest townhouse, they ordered Chinese takeout and watched cartoons on the couch. There were no cameras, no investors, just them. Later, after Emma had gone to bed, James took Anna's hand and said, "You know, we never really had a first date." She laughed. "Are you asking me out, Mr. Walker?" "I'm asking you to stay. Forever." Anna paused, then reached into her pocket. She pulled out a tiny silver key. "To the townhouse?" he asked, confused. She smiled. "To everything." For a while, life was quiet. After the accident and Anna's victorious return from Singapore, James settled back into work at the garage, taking fewer shifts and spending more time with Emma. Anna, still technically on leave, ran Grayson Technologies. From home, sipping coffee on the porch while Emma played with chalk on the sidewalk. It was peaceful. Almost too peaceful. And in the back of Anna's mind, something began to stir. There was a part of her past she had never told James about. Something she had buried beneath board meetings, years of ambition, and carefully rehearsed smiles. A secret. So old it felt like a scar, but a scar that had never really healed. It came back one morning when Anna opened her inbox and saw the name. Madeline Wren. The email was short, cold, legal. "Ms. Grayson, it has come to my client's attention that you are now publicly involved in a relationship, and that said relationship includes a minor child. Please be advised, this changes the terms of the original agreement." Anna stared at the screen, her pulse pounding in her ears. No, it couldn't be. She closed the laptop and sat in silence for a long time. Emma was at school. James was at work. And she was alone with memories that threatened to unravel everything she'd built. That night, James noticed her silence. "You okay?" he asked as they did dishes together, his hand brushing hers. Anna nodded, but too quickly. James dried his hands, then gently turned her to face him. "Talk to me." She hesitated, then whispered, "There's something you don't know about." He waited. And so she told him. Years ago, when Anna was just starting her company, fresh from business school and drowning in pressure, she had made a choice. A mistake. She had fallen for a powerful investor, older, charming, manipulative. They had an affair. She got pregnant, and I panicked, she said, her voice cracking. He threatened to ruin everything if I kept the baby. Said it would destroy my credibility. That no one would invest in a single mother. Tears filled her eyes. So I made a deal. I signed custody over to him. I told myself I wasn't ready. That I was too young. That I would come back one day when I was stronger. But I never did. She paused. The silence was brutal. James, I have a son. He's 8 now. His name is Caleb, and he doesn't even know who I am. The words shattered the air between them. James stared at her. Not with anger, but with something worse. Hurt. Deep, quiet hurt. You never told me, he said, his voice low. Because I was ashamed, Anna whispered. And because I was afraid. That if you knew the worst thing I'd ever done, you'd stop looking at me the way you do. James turned away, running his hand through his hair. He wanted to scream, but didn't. He wanted to say something wise, but COULDN single quotes T. Instead. He said the truest thing in his heart. I don't care about your past. But I do care what you do with it now. The next day, Anna called her lawyer. Within a week, she stood outside a gated estate, waiting. The door opened, and there he was. Caleb. Dark hair. Her eyes, standing beside a stern man in a crisp suit, his father Mitchell Wren. Mitchell looked her up and down. You finally decided to show up. I'm not here to fight, Anna said softly. I'm here to see my son. He laughed. Coldly. You had your chance. You walked away. Anna knelt, looking at Caleb. Hi, she whispered. My name is Anna, and I know I don't deserve anything from you. But I would love to know you if you'll let me. Caleb blinked at her, then looked at his father, then back at her. Are you my mom? He asked, barely audible. Anna's heart broke. She nodded. Yes, I am. Weeks passed. Slowly, painfully, trust began to grow. At first, Caleb only agreed to meet in a park, supervised, then short dinners, then weekends. Emma, always warm and curious, welcomed him like a sibling from the start. James watched it all happen, never pushing Anna, just supporting, silently and fully. But then the press found out. Grayson's hidden son revealed shocking custody. Battle imminent? The headlines were ruthless. Mitchell, furious, threatened legal action. He claimed Anna was using Caleb to fix her image, to rebuild her brand. That she was dangerous, unstable. Anna nearly gave up, but James held her in the dark one night and whispered, This isn't just about what you lost. It's about what you're brave enough to fight for now. The court hearing came. Anna stood, hands trembling, voice strong. I made a mistake, she told the judge. But I'm not asking to undo the past. I'm asking for a chance to build a future, not as a CEO, not as a name in the news, but as a mother. Mitchell tried to paint her as selfish. James, sitting quietly in the back, never spoke until the judge invited character testimony. He stood and with simple, powerful words he said, Anna Grayson saved my daughter's life, not with money, with love. And if you could see how she holds her son's drawings like they're priceless art, you'd know. She's not here for redemption. She's here for him. The court granted supervised shared custody. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. Anna cried in the parking lot, clinging to James, Emma, and Caleb. A strange little family, broken, stitched, but together. James kissed her forehead. No more secrets, he said. None, she promised. The summer that followed was the closest thing to happiness James Walker had ever known. Mornings began with pancakes and chaos, Emma singing nonsense songs while Caleb rolled his eyes, pretending not to laugh. Anna, now a part-time CEO and full-time mother, wore aprons more often than suits and learned how to burn toast with alarming consistency. Their modest townhouse, cramped, noisy, alive, had become the center of a world James never thought he deserved. But happiness, as always, comes With a price dot, it began with a letter. A simple envelope, no return address. Inside, a newspaper clipping from over a decade ago, James's mugshot. Back when he was 22, just out of high school, broke and angry at the world, James had made one terrible decision. He stole a car, just joyriding with the wrong friends. No one was hurt. He served his sentence, paid his dues, and worked every day since to become someone Emma could be proud of. But someone had found it. And they wanted something. A week later, a man in a sharp suit came to the garage, corporate-looking, polished, cold. "I represent the Blake Foundation," he said. "We're a tech philanthropy firm. We've been following your story." James wiped grease from his hands, confused. "My story?" The man smiled thinly. "Anna Grayson's mechanic boyfriend. The single father with a heart of gold. It's compelling, inspiring. We want you to be the face of our new campaign. From grit to greatness. Nationwide billboards, interviews, media rounds." James blinked. "You want me on TV? We're offering $500,000 for a 6-month contract. No strings, just your face, your story." James didn't trust it. Then came the twist. The man dropped the file on the workbench. "Of course we'll need full disclosure. The truth sells, especially when it's messy." He tapped the mugshot photo with a smug finger. James stiffened. "So this is blackmail. We call it opportunity." That night, James told Anna everything. "I thought this was behind me," he whispered, staring at the photo. "But maybe it never will be." Anna took the paper and tore it in half. "You're not your past. And you sure as hell won't be used for someone else's PR stunt." But James wasn't so sure. He kept thinking of the money, of the life it could build. A real house, a college fund for Emma, a future for Caleb, for them. The next day, he took a walk alone. He stood outside the house he grew up in. Small, run down, empty now. The place where his father walked out, and his mother broke down. He remembered younger James, angry, reckless, aching for something to belong to. He wasn't that kid anymore. But the question haunted him. Did the world see him that way still? 2 weeks later, the offer was leaked. Someone published the mugshot online. Then the story exploded. Grayson's lover has a criminal past. Mechanic turned thief turned hero. Is this who Anna Grayson calls family? Anna was livid. They did this to push us back into a corner. Her board panicked again. Investors wavered. Even Caleb's father, Mitchell, filed for a reevaluation of custody. Everything was falling apart, and James blamed himself. "I brought this to your doorstep," he told Anna quietly one night. "Maybe you'd be better off without me." Anna froze. Then she walked across the room and slammed a photo onto the table. It was the picture Emma had drawn: Anna, James, Caleb, and herself. 4 stick figures under a sun, with the words, "My family." Anna's voice trembled. "Better off? Don't you dare say that. You saved us every single day. And now we fight for you." Then, something unexpected happened. The media began to shift. It started with a viral video: Emma standing on her school stage, proudly reading a class essay. "My daddy made a mistake once, a long time ago. But now he helps people. He fixes cars. He makes pancakes. And he never lets me forget that I'm loved. That's what makes someone a hero." It hit over 10 million views in 3 days. The world changed its tune. Not all of it, but enough. A few talk shows invited James to speak, not as a cautionary tale, but as a redemption story. Anna stood by him every step. The Blake Foundation, sensing a publicity backfire, dropped their campaign entirely. And James? He turned down every dollar. "I'm not a brand," he said in an interview. "I'm a father. I'm a man in love. That's enough for me." In the fall, they finally moved into a real house, not a mansion, not a palace, just a warm, bright home on a quiet street with a porch big enough for coffee and chalk drawings. Caleb started calling James Dad. One day after dinner, Emma said it was the best day ever. And Anna? She proposed right there in the garage, while James was under a car, greasy and laughing. She dropped the ring in his hand and said, "You fixed everything. Now let me fix forever." James cried, then said yes. They married beneath an old oak tree. Emma was the flower girl. Caleb held the rings. Their vows weren't poetic. They were honest. "I promise to love all of you, even the parts that hurt. I promise to never run not from you, not from us, not from our past. I promise to hold your hand when the press calls, when the world judges, when the nights are long and the fear returns. Because love isn't perfect, but it's worth every scar. And sometimes, the greatest stories begin in the quietest places, like a small bar on a Thursday night, where a single dad handed a stranger a napkin with a balloon, and neither of them ever looked back.